Mr. Andrew Samuels, thank you so much for being here with us today. This is an interview that will eventually reach our readers, Herald Publishing House readers, and of course people around the world via YouTube. Because you were so nice to give us this short interview presenting a book that it's for the first time being published in Romanian. So thank you for being here. My first question for you today is, what is a post-Jungian?
You know, a lot of people say, do you mean something like postmodern? Actually, the explanation is very simple. There was already a book called Freud and the Post-Freudians, so I thought, well, why the hell we don't have a book called Jung and the Post-Jungians? But I wrote it for two reasons. Firstly, because I was a student, or more or less finishing being a student, and I was so confused about the different kinds of Jungian psychology and Jungian analysis. I thought it would be a good idea to have a kind of a guide and to show that there are different schools. In other words, to show that something has happened post-Jung, after Jung. And also I wanted to be critical. I didn't want just to write the same old bullshit, Jung said this, situation, archetypes, da, da, da. I wanted to show that there'd been a lot of discussions about these concepts in the Jungian field. And I also wanted to compare it to psychoanalysis. So post-Jungian really meant critical distance from Jung, but friendly connection to Jung at the same time.
Thank you. Of course, later on, people will just be able to read the book and understand other issues regarding this, what's being a post-Jungian meaning. Second question. Are you a post-Jungian? Because you criticize lots of Jung's concepts, as you said before, but you are also being constructive, and you are one of the most active promoters of Jungian psychotherapy. So, are you a post-Jungian, and what bounds you to the Jungian analysis? What does it bring valuable to you that you don't find in other therapies?
You know, it's really a very fascinating, even an incredible question. No Freudian or somebody who follows Carl Rogers would ask such a question. Of course, their ideas are brilliant and Jung's ideas are brilliant, but nobody is believing, like in a religion, in the effect of Rogers or Freud or whoever. This is the problem with Jung. You know, the Jung the man is our biggest problem. Somebody wrote a book, you know, called The Jung Cult, and it was really quite an accusation. I don't think Jungian psychology is a cult, but I think it could be if we're not careful. So I think it's absolutely right to look at the good features of Jungian psychology and at the bad features, and to stop concentrating on the old man, but to concentrate on the ideas and above all their use, because the use of an idea, whether it's in the personal or the social situation, is what we should judge it by, not this kind of belief based on fascination with a big personality, which of course he was. So I like some bits, I don't like other bits. Some bits are surprisingly progressive politically and socially. For example, you can take the theory of the animus and the anima, and you can see that these make it possible to give a psychological support to the idea that the range of behaviors for women and for men is much bigger than societies usually allow. So what looks like a kind of internal dialogue between you and your animus in your case is actually a discovery by you of many things that you can achieve in the world and in relationships and in your life. So you can spin it.
Yes.
If you understand, you can flip it. I don't know if you can see my hand. You can direction. This is what I do all the time. And when you do that, these ideas are absolutely brilliant. So that's just one small example in the gender politics area, and that of course extends into
And that is a very
relationships, as
important
you can
issue
imagine.
because, first of all, we actually react to whatever it's more similar to us. But of course, what is similar and different at the same time, that being, of course, the other gender. So, sorry for this interruption. So you said you wrote this book 30 years ago. Do you find it? Are you proud of yourself after 30 years?
Oh, I moved on from writing books about Jung or Jungian psychology. I'm much more interested now in the use of psychotherapy ideas generally in the face of the terrible political and economic circumstances you see of that many countries are in, and yours is in to a very great extent, as you obviously know. Just to give you an example of how another example of how these ideas work. When I'm discussing with people about economics, because I write a lot about economics, about economic justice, economic injustice, and why don't we achieve more equality? Because everybody says they want it, but they don't seem to get it. And the shadow is very relevant here. The shadow is the thing we don't want to be, the thing we don't like in ourselves or don't approve of in ourselves. And I have done a lot of workshops in finding that even in quite progressive people, even socialists in the West, they actually have a big economic shadow, and they need to become more conscious of it. This is what lies behind the greed and the recklessness of the Western bankers in the last few
It's
years. That's the
part
great
of
thing about
our
it. There's
life.
emails coming in and I can't turn it off.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So there's an example again of a Jungian idea that I can take absolutely out of the personal context and use with quite a lot of success in a more social or political context, because what I do a lot of the time now is I work with politicians. I have done now for 20 years with very senior politicians. I mean, I worked everybody in Britain, Blair. I'm not so proud of that, but I did for several years working with Blair and his cabinet in the mid 1990s, between 1994 and 1998. And then more recently, working with the Obama election campaign in the United States, which I did in 2008, 2012. So I don't go there as a Jungian, okay? I go there as a therapist. And I think this is very important for Jungians to get out of their ghetto, if I can use a very emotional word, and they realize they're just psychotherapists. All you're studying is one particular school of psychotherapy, and you cannot be a psychotherapist who only knows one school. So if people listening to this are interested in training or studying Jungian psychology, in a way, in a humorous way, I would say don't. Meaning, don't only study this. Study
Holistic
lots of different
attitude, even in
psychologies.
psychology and psychanalysis. So you already answered the third question I was about to ask you, whether your social involvement came first before your attitude as a psychanalyst, or if it was the other way around. So my last question for you.
No, 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 no. I didn't. Because I actually found that a very interesting
Okay,
question,
good.
sophisticated question. So I'm going to answer it, okay? Because, yeah, because I discovered for myself this phrase that feminists have taught us all: the personal is political. I'm sure you heard this expression. Yes, you there are real big limits to what a political system can do if it doesn't reach people inside. And this was the problem with communism, by the way. It changed things outside, but didn't reach people inside, maybe a very few. And those few were getting huge benefits from the system. But for most people, the changing material circumstances, even in the West, is not enough if it doesn't affect people personally. And then the reverse is also true. You can have years of psychotherapy, and if you go out to a corrupt and illegal and unequal political system, all your psychotherapy is a waste. Now, I've traveled a lot in Eastern Europe and in the former Soviet Union, and these are big problems which have to be faced, to realize that changing social circumstances and economic circumstances doesn't change the heart and the soul. But you can't work on your heart and your soul if you have to return to a shitty society. So it's both. You have to do both. And this would be my message. But it's not based on just of Western arrogance. I've traveled in these areas and taught in these areas, and these points are really, really important.
So
I think.
Is it okay if I ask you to send a short message to those therapists, psychologists, activists, NGO volunteers who will most probably be here waiting for this Romanian book to be published,
Yes.
your book to be published in Romanian? So what would your message be for these people who are about to find out what you wrote 30 years ago, still available in your book, Jung and Post-Jungians?
I would say don't trust leaders. I mean leaders in the professional and academic field. Don't trust Jung. Don't trust me. Don't trust the other famous people who are coming to the book launch. Because one of the things that's so important, Jung, for example, compared to Freud, is that Jung insists that people test everything out against their own experience and their own feelings and intuitions. And I hope this is a very welcome message. Don't trust Western economic systems. Don't trust communistic economic systems. Don't trust the military. Don't trust the religions. Don't trust the psychologists. Don't trust the publishers. Don't trust anybody. In other words, the way ahead is a kind of negative path, it seems to me, at this time in the world's evolution. It's not just to think for yourself, but to actively be skeptical. I know this word might be difficult to translate, but skepticism seems to me to be the important thing. I am an enthusiast for not being too
Great.
enthusiastic
So
about
actually
anybody.
being an active skeptic, it's a positive attitude. So we will, just end this interview with a positive idea. So thank you very, very, very much on behalf of the public and Herald Publishing House for being with us today. And let's hope